I know we all might be a little tired from the big game yesterday. Yes, LSU versus South Carolina, but we have a lot to break down from the past week. First, how that game yesterday will affect the Huskies as LSU is no longer undefeated, as well as the breaking of the almost 30-year not losing back-to-back games streak for the Huskies. Additionally, they are entering one of their toughest weeks in the Big East. We're going to get into all of it, but welcome back to Under Review. I'm Mahn.
And I'm Inesta. Let's get into it.
After that South Carolina loss, the Huskies had to turn it around, head down to Wisconsin to face Marquette. They're ranked in the middle of the Big East, and the Huskies could just not complete this win, meaning they lost their 30-year streak, almost 30 years, would have been 30 years in March, of not losing back-to-back games. What were your main takeaways during this game?
To be completely honest, I think it was a fluke. They played so many games, they played so long, so tough. They've been basically playing with 6 players for so many weeks, it's kind of hard to count now, but I just think there was going to be a point where they cracked, and mentally and physically exhausting, but I think with this loss, they're going to be back on their toes and hopefully not lose another Big East game.
Yeah, I definitely think the mental and physical exhaustion is getting to them. I know that can't be an excuse because their performance was really all over the place. 0% from the three-point line in the first half. 40.4% shooting. It really wasn't their best performance, but you could tell how exhausted they were playing with only 6 players. Also, credit to Marquette. They played a great game, and they knew they could capitalize on the Huskies during this time. I think the turnaround from South Carolina to this, it was just hard to get back into the space to play the game. That I think that's kind of where they fell. Many people have been saying play the bench more, play the bench more. Do you think Coach Auriemma should, or do you think we need to wait for Caroline and AZ to get back?
Either way, I think getting Caroline and AZ back is like a must, especially for March. But as Gino has said in press conferences, if you're not going to have players that come off the bench and score, then kind of what's the point? I feel like Amari needs to go out there and get points on the board and just help them in any way that she can, or else it's going to be the 6 players that have been playing for so long. But either way, AZ and Caroline need to come back just to have more bodies on the court.
I agree. I think it's tough because you want to give players like Anesh and Amari and Ayana more minutes, but they haven't proven themselves. And that's the one that's getting me, Ayana Patterson. She was a standout in high school, explosive in the paint, and she's been doing a good job, but I'm just waiting for that full aggressive power to come out because I've seen how dynamic she can be, but I would love to see more of it. A lot is still lingering from that South Carolina game. We talked about last week how Coach Auriemma got a technical because he said that they were being too tough on Lou in the paint. It's crazy how much she gets beat up out there. And Dawn Staley commented back to this, and she said, "We're called something other than players that are locked in. They play the right way and approach it in the right way, whether they win or lose. We don't denounce anyone's play. They are always uplifting the game of women's basketball. And when we're getting our heads beat in by UConn for all those years, I said nothing. We've been called so many things, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it because I coach some of the best human beings the game has ever had." Then Coach Auriemma had this to say after the Marquette game.
No, I've not reached out to anyone, and I don't know whether Dawn was referring to me specifically or whether this has been happening to her team for quite some time now. And, if people have been paying attention, seriously, I've been making that statement for 20-some years, since Diana was playing for us. And I said the exact same thing after the Villanova game, the exact same thing after anybody that was paying attention. Ask Holly Rowe what I said at halftime of the Tennessee game. I said it after the Providence game. And in each one of those instances, right, everything I said was directed squarely at the officials. and not one other coach said a word. Because you have a right to coach your team any way you want. I have enough trouble coaching my own team. But I can have a say in how officials call the game. And if the rules are supposed to be the rules that, as they're interpreted to me, then they've got to be called according to the rules. And if I'm never allowed to question an official about their calls and criticize them for the way they officiate a game, without someone thinking I'm casting aspirations towards their team, that's just asinine. And if you've been paying attention, I've been saying it for 20 years. So.
What are your thoughts on the now Coach Auriemma and Dawn Staley debate that has spurred out of last Sunday's game?
I really don't think it's as much as the media made it. I really do think that both Coach Auriemma and Coach Staley were just protecting their players and having their backs, as every coach should. But I think Gino, he was really just referring to the referees and how Lou was really getting roughed in the paint. But that's just how South Carolina plays. And with UConn being at a disadvantage for the amount of players they have, it just didn't add up for them, already having an advantage over them, being the number one team in the country. But at the end of the day, I think Gino was really just strictly referring to the referees and how they officiated the game, and they were just protecting their players at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think in the moment, I couldn't even see why Coach Auriemma was so riled up to get that technical. But after he had the explanation, when he's playing with only 6 players, he does have to defend them because you can't lose someone like Lou during this time. I don't think he meant it as a dig at South Carolina, especially because he was pretty furious during the halftime during Tennessee, as you saw with that Holly Rowe interaction. So I don't think it's just that team. I think it was just kind of misinterpreted, but it'll definitely make things interesting in March because now there's this underlying tension between the two of them. But it's not too much time to think about that, as they had to move on to Georgetown. They had to turn it around to face the Hoyas. Although it was very close, they were able to pull off the win, 67-59. What do you think were some of the key factors to get that win?
I think that Dorka Juhas played a huge role in this game. She had 18 points and 15 rebounds. Those rebounds are key when turnovers have been a problem for them. And, at the end of the game, Georgetown got close to come back. So having those rebounds and putting those points on the board really kept UConn in the game. And just at the very end, making huge clutch foul shots and just getting points on the board is kind of all they need to do here.
I completely agree. I especially love the stat 16 second chance points. Recently, we haven't been seeing those second chance points, and other teams have been capitalizing on them. I think offensive rebounding is something to really focus on. It'll make us be able to capitalize more on each possession. And during that South Carolina game, we saw Cardoso being able to get it up 1, 2, 3 times, and just being able to get points on every single possession is really key. So I love the 16 second chance points, and I'm hoping they can do more of that in the future. Every week we talk about AZ Fudd and Caroline Ducharme and their timelines. Ducharme hasn't played in the new year, being out over a month and a half for a concussion. So that's insane in itself. She says she's almost ready. Do you think it's concerning, first, how long it's been for a concussion, and how important is it to get her back?
There really hasn't been a lot of media or news on her for the last month and a half, however long. But I do think it's very important, even with AZ too. Yes, we know it's her knee, but we really don't know the big extent of what the issue is. But like I said before, just having bodies on the court is going to make a huge difference, because after every game you can tell Lou's getting close to fouling out. Nika's got, it's just 6 players is not going to be enough to take us through March Madness. And just adding more players would take so much pressure off the current players, and I just think it would make for a better game flow for them.
She was really getting into her rhythm right before she got injured. She had 19 points in the last game she played on New Year's Eve. But regardless of how strong she is in those first games where she's trying to come back, we just need an extra pair of legs. Additionally, as much as I want her back, I really don't want to rush her, as a month and a half out with a concussion is kind of concerning. So if there is something larger, I'd want to prioritize her health over her playing. But she really would change how we're playing right now with how exhausted they are, especially with how dynamic she was proving to be last year. So it would be awesome to get her back, and I hope it's going to be Wednesday, because they were predicting this week, and then it wasn't Wednesday, then it wasn't Saturday, so I really think it could be against Creighton. This is going to be one of, if not the toughest week in the Big East for the Huskies, having to face Creighton and Villanova on their home turf. It's number 2 and 3 in our conference. How difficult do you think this week is going to be?
I think after what happened last week that these games are gonna be a huge, proving that they're still UConn. They still have all the potential they've been saying they've had for the last 6 months. But especially being back at home, they had a long stretch that they were not at home, and except for South Carolina. But that it proved, I just feel like they needed a mental break, and being back home maybe will lift their spirits. And I think it's very important that they get these wins. I do think they'll be on their toes after, being so close with Georgetown and losing to Marquette. But this is, you're right, a very important week for them.
I think the larger issue is these teams are watching really closely. And Marquette knew they could capitalize on this. Georgetown almost did. They know that they're at their lowest powerful levels, I guess, that we have such a short bench. And seeing us lose to Marquette and be so close with Georgetown, teams like Creighton and Villanova will really capitalize on that. Maddie Seagrass said that last Villanova game stung. Additionally, she dropped 50 points this week. 50 points. That's video game numbers.
Yeah.
Additionally, if you look at the shot chart, it's she didn't even miss. She took 3 shots that she missed. This girl, if she's not in the National Player of the Year conversation, I don't know who should be, but she is going to come out big that game, and I really think they need to prepare for that. Creighton is on a 6-game winning streak, 3 players over 10 points. Neither of these teams can be underestimated, and I think they're really going to put up a fight. So I'm actually really excited to see how this week goes, and I hope Ducharme is back for it, because that could change anything. Additionally, I mentioned before the Super Bowl Sunday game, which in my opinion was LSU versus South Carolina. It was the predicted game of the year. But it actually ended up not as many predicted. LSU losing by 24 points. What did you think of the result, and what do you think that means for us?
Well, I really did think it would be a better game. Both teams have been dominant all year with iconic coaches behind them, with Kim Mulkey and Don Stanley. But I do think this tracks back to South Carolina having so much more experience against ranked opponents. This year they played UConn, UCLA, Arkansas, and probably more. And LSU, I don't think has played a ranked team. And that just goes back to Gino Auriemma's way of coaching and how it's so important for the Huskies to get these experiences during the regular season, so that they not that they can have a smoother March Madness, but they know their competition. And I think that was all shown during that game with LSU and South Carolina.
I completely agree. I think the fact that we lost to South Carolina by 4 points, and seeing LSU, who was undefeated, lose them by 24, I think it hopefully says a lot about our team. Us now being ranked 6th because of the Marquette loss. I didn't know how big of a drop it would be. LSU is just 5 above us. I think it might be a toss-up between how the season goes, I guess, but it might be a toss-up if LSU is a number 1 seed or we're a number 1 seed. Just us being on that 5 and 6 line, I could see us moving up to 3 and 4 at some point, but I'm curious to see that, especially because Angel Reese was really shut down by Aaliyah Boston and the bigs of South Carolina, and Aaliyah Edwards, I think, kind of rose to the occasion. So I am very curious to see that Angel Reese, Aaliyah Edwards matchup, and I think it's completely realistic that that would happen in March. Additionally, Zaya Cook has proven to be insane. I think that's important for the Huskies to scout out for March. I know we just played them, but she continues to dominate, and she's not in the top 150 for points, rebounds, assists, but she's beyond the stat sheet. She kind of just changes the energy on the floor. Just with the way she played against LSU and the way she played against us, I really think she could be a key player that could change their game in March, which is why I want Fudd and Ducharme back so soon. Hopefully that'll be in the near future, but until then, We face Creighton at home this Wednesday, and then we face Villanova on Saturday in the Finn. Thanks for watching. I'm Brie Mahn.
And I'm Ava Inesta.